Buenos nachos and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we're going to be working on this Xbox that is, well, it's haunted. What do I mean by that, you ask? Let me show you. So I'm going to plug in our AV multi-out to HDMI, and now I am hooking up power, and it immediately powers on by itself. What's with that? We do get picture on screen, and it looks like Eject works just fine, which is highly irregular when I see this issue with these consoles. I can't turn it off though, so we know the power button's not working. And in addition to this issue that we're having right here, we have error 07. And the internet has indicated that error 7 could be a couple of different things. From your DVD drive failing, the IDE cable being at fault, the hard drive being dead, or maybe even a capacitor that's causing the issue. Without further ado, let's go ahead and open up this console and see what's going on. So we have a never opened console here, manufactured in 2002, December 18th. When opening up these consoles, I usually do my best to maintain the original integrity of the adhesive for these feet, because I don't want to apply new adhesive if I don't need to. And now we need our T15 or T10, I think it is. No, T20 maybe? T15. Wow, it's got that original factory torque here. It's not wanting to come out very easily. And one more. We have officially voided the warranty that existed back in 2002. Of course, that didn't stop a couple of people from sending their Xbox to Microsoft for repair. What do you think the condition of this console will be inside? Is it going to be filled with cactus rocha? Well, let's find out. Here comes the reveal. Once we can get it open. All right, here we are. And look at that. It's actually pretty clean considering there's very little dust. So we're going to need a different Torx bit to remove the hard drive and the DVD drive. I believe I used the, what is it, T8? Yes. And of course you want to try your best to use a magnetic bit because it sucks when you don't have a magnetic bit. So the first problem we're going to try and resolve is the auto powering on. As for the version of this console, I think it is a 1.1 because we're missing that daughter board here. And we do indeed have a couple of leaky capacitors. Let's go ahead and examine the true damage of the leaky capacitor. The haunting? Well, that's probably caused by R7F7 and maybe even C7G6. It doesn't look like the capacitor juice was the best drink because that guy is dead now. Whatever that guy might have been. We'll try our best to go ahead and clean up some of this capacitor juice and then see if we can get the console to boot again. So I'm just going to apply some good old-fashioned alcohol and we're going to do a little bit of scrubbing real quick. We're hoping for no intense trace repairs at this time. See if we can dodge that bullet. With the way this board looks, there's no telling what the traces look like directly beneath this capacitor area. So we may end up having to lift the board and see what the actual real damage is in the back. So it looks like if you press the eject button, you can turn it off now after the cleaning. Of course, if I press the power button, no go. So the damage may be worse than we feared, but that's not a problem. We'll just go ahead and remove the board and see what's going on, because we already know we're going to have to do some solder work. I mean, besides the corrosion, this shell, this chassis is in great condition. Just a tiny, tiny bit of dust in here. Whoever had this console prior took care of it. Definitely from a fairly dust-free home. Very rare. Do we have any corrosion? Can't really tell at the moment. That could be dust. I mean, it kind of looks like we had the beginnings of some trace damage. It doesn't look like we're going to have to do any trace repair this time. Quite surprised. So now let's go ahead and resume looking at the top of the board. Do we suppose this was a spider or a scorpion? My money's on it being a spider. Yeah, looks like it was a spider. We're gonna go ahead and have a proper funeral and a burial for this guy. You may go ahead and send us some donations in the description below in our contact form. I'm sure this guy will appreciate it. actually my first time using this wire brush to clean off corrosion. It actually seems to fare out quite well, probably a little bit better than using a regular brush, if I may say so. Kind of wish I'd been using this thing a little bit sooner. Yeah, so that right there looks like it might need a little bit of retouchment. We'll add some more solder to that. We'll probably touch this one up. If I had to guess, this resistor probably needs a little bit of help. That trace right there isn't looking the greatest. See if I can get in here. This capacitor has seen better days, I'll tell you that much. Alright, so let's go ahead and clean up some of these copper and coating shavings, and then let's go ahead and start up our soldering. We'll go ahead and turn on our vacuum. Alright, so we'll go ahead and add flux to a lot of these places that we just scratched away. So we're going to want to start some soldering, get our leaded bobbin of solder. As for how I'm going to do this, we'll find out. So first, let's go ahead and touch up in this area here. We can do this without losing foci. Probably would be easier if I removed some of these larger capacitors, but well, what am I going to do? So we've taken care of that joint right there. We're going to need this side now. I'm actually very surprised that capacitor is holding on. We'll probably want to add some flux to that. I want some nice looking joints here. This one is not giving me the best joint in the world. See, did I forget? Nope, we did put some flux on that, so we'll get in there somehow. Yeah, when you're dealing with these corrosion issues, it doesn't take much for you to miss something. Let's go ahead and take care of the tops of these capacitors while we're here. That's kind of too much solder. We can always come back and clean it up later, but I think right now we're going to just try and figure out what's going on. It's looking like this console does need a lot of work. We already know it's probably going to need a full recapping, but we're not going to do that in this video. So did we get everything over here so far? Yes, we did. Now let's go ahead and touch up this area. Probably should have opted for a smaller soldering iron tip, so I guess that's what I'll go ahead and do. We're switching over to our friend T15 BC1, and we were originally using the T15 D24. Definitely not a very easy area to get into here. I think I'll try and attack this thing from the top, just because we're having a difficult time getting in there. See, did we get everything over here? Yes, we did. And now this resistor that looked like it was having some difficulties. And that VL almost looks like it's not even connected. This resistor, I think, is gonna have to be replaced. We will try and power up the console, but I'm pretty sure it's gone. So for now, let's go ahead and clean up this flux, or I guess some people would probably say I'm just smearing it around the board because I'm not using flux remover or flux off, which is probably true. We will go ahead and use a Q-tip to clean up as much as we can. Probably ought to use that metal brush that I have. Maybe that'll do some damage on this. That resistor does not look like it's attached at all. We'll see if this console is worse or if it's doing better after this repair. I'd be very surprised if it's doing better. Alright, let's move that microscope out of the way. Let's turn off our vacuum. Let's get this right back in here. Does it auto power on? It sure does. So we're probably going to need to take care of that resistor. That's a 10K resistor at R7F7. Let's go ahead and remove it and turn our vacuum back on. That looks a lot nicer now. Okay, let's go ahead and get this resistor in here. Probably ought to add a little bit of flux to make this thing look somewhat decent. And if it works, we'll clean up the flux afterwards. And I see that, and it just looks like that via wasn't even touching anything. And then the same thing for that resistor right next to it. The joint looks questionable to me, so I'm just going to try and add some solder to it. And that joint still looks questionable to me. This is a real difficult area to get into. Better, I guess. Alright, let's go ahead and power this on and see what it's doing. Is it going to auto power on by itself? It sure does. And the eject button doesn't turn it off, so that's a good sign, I guess. Does, however, mean we have more work to go. We've decided to remove C7G6, and we're going to replace it with a donor. And you'll notice that I decided to remove the clock capacitor, and it's in pretty bad shape, if I may say so. And this solder joint looks like it needs more solder. It's definitely too much solder, but we're just going to let it be for now. So what is going on over here? That doesn't look like it's even soldered on. Can't really win here. You either put too much solder on or you don't put enough solder on. That bottom is attached, it just doesn't look like it is. If our capacitor doesn't take care of it, we're going to replace C7G7 as well. And we'll clean off this flux once we know what's going on. But first, well, for sure we're going to clean up this corrosion because that's just bothering me with the way it looks. That definitely looks pretty bad. Looks like a burn through the board. Let's go ahead and power on the console again. Let's see if it automatically powers on. If it does, then we'll have to replace that other capacitor. Yep, so we're going to have to replace that capacitor. But I kind of figured as much with the condition that it was in. Go ahead and put it right over here for now. Let's go ahead and remove this. Wow, that's quite the mess that thing left right there. You can really smell that capacitor juice. It's very fishy smelling. Alright, let's go ahead and put this capacitor on. Is the issue in the back? Maybe we overlooked something? Could it be that right there? Yeah, it definitely could be a break right there. Let's take a look. See if we can scratch away a little bit more here. And there it is. Very well hidden break in the traces. Oh wow, it looks like corrosion all the way over here next to the USB ports. That's highly irregular. So then our problem will be along this trace, and we'll have to start rebuilding right here. Alright, let's go ahead and get my fancy tweezers out of my bag here, and we'll be using this fancy wire right here. It is micro thin. Let's go ahead and get our drill here, or mini Dremel, and start scratching away at some of this. Now I don't recall if those were the only two breaks, so we'll go ahead and keep going. Ah yes, we did have another one over here. We'll take care of this break in the line, if I can find it. There we are. And I believe that was all. Let's clean this up with some alcohol. Just dry this off real quick. All right, we're gonna wanna go ahead and pre-tin all of this after we've added some flux, of course. Go ahead and get our vacuum going on, and now we start. First, apply some leaded soldering, and let's get our vacuum in range. And I suppose if you're using some high melt solder, you probably could just bridge that joint without having to do anything extravagant. Alright, now for our fancy wire. We'll see how we do this here. Tweezers are so sharp that they're digging into the board. It's like the slightest movement makes this whole board move. It makes it difficult. So that looks like it's adhered. Let's go ahead and make sure though, because we don't want to come back. And that of course just breaks right off. This is very fine wire. And you can just bend it back and forth until it comes off for the excess. There you go. And now let's get this side. Problem when you're dealing with things this tiny, everything just wants to move on you. And I guess I could probably get some kind of platform for the Xbox. I know there's a couple of things that are 3D printed that one of the people that does CPU mods and RAM mods uses. Alright, so is that connected over here? It is, but it's not connected good enough over here. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and break that off. The amount of excess that's on there should be fine. And we have one last break. Yep, right there. Have it hold that for us for now. Let's go ahead and straighten this out. And we'll probably have to add just a tad bit of solder. Alright, I think that's going to do it. So let's go ahead and pull this off. Let's go ahead and clean the excess flux off the bottom, because we're probably never going to see this ever again. That actually looks pretty good. Alright, let's go ahead and perform a continuity test and make sure that everything is going smoothly. So I believe we had to take it all the way from right there. Now we can boot it up. This was supposed to be a quick video and it turned out to be a very long one. Alright, let's get our Xboxing chassis here. Hopefully this is the last time we'll be taking this board out. Well, no, I speak too soon. Capacitors need to be done on this, but not in this video. Alright. The momentous of truth, or else this video is done with. Plugging it in now. It didn't auto power on. Alright, pretty sure we still have error 07. As you can see, we still have error 7. We may decide to go ahead and revisit this Xbox in another video. We'll see. Until next time. We cleaned up the flux and the capacitor juice, and this is how the board looks now. We of course removed the capacitor, or the remnants of the capacitor, and as you did see, we replaced C7G6, C7G7, and of course we had to replace R7F7, and we touched up quite a bit of the vias and traces in these areas. In the back, we did have to rebuild the bottom trace, and we used very fine wire. We're going to coat these traces with solder mask ink, and we're going to be using a different color than usual. Every time I've tried to put this stuff on, it usually just comes out like a fountain. So I'm going to see if I can find something small that I can use. I'm trying to not press this thing because I don't want a ton to come out. Oof. Still ended up having too much. Alright, we'll go ahead and use our toothpick to spread this around. And we have one more section that we did perform the repair on, right there. We're going to use our UV light to cure the solder mask. Essentially, this is our setup right here for the UV curing. And if you don't have a UV light, you can go ahead and just place the board out in the sun for a couple of minutes. Probably 10 minutes will do it. I'll repeat this process on the other section that I've rebuilt, and then we'll put this board back into the Xbox.